This week on the YouTube channel, we are going to be reviewing issue number 2014. It is the 2026 Phantom Annual and the Phantom and Mandrake. So let's get into this. I hope you enjoy this comic book review. It's Jason Paulos this time around with the cover, and it's a wraparound cover, will you believe? Wraparound cover. It looks really awesome. We've also got our replica for this year. We're going to be getting into that and this really soon. So the contents of this comic book: When Legends Meet. The Phantom and Mandrake Magician. We've got Mandrake's Bon Voyage, The Missing Avatrix, Lights Camera Danger, Trouble in the 12 Nations, Shadows on Devil Road, Still Lovely, Still Deadly. That was actually quite a good story. Magician's Curse, Part 1, Part 2, Part 3. In this story, the Mandrake and the Magician are visiting the Phantom, and they're gonna go and do some of their hypnotic illusions. There's this cruise ship, of course, and Nada and Diana, I think they go on a vacation, but really, the Phantom and Mandrake are headed to a cruise ship to do yet another adventure. There is 3 ladies. They are all up to no good. The people, they're dressed as the Cinderella sisters. They go in and they start trying to cause a bit of havoc. The Phantom and they go in and greet the captain, and then the Phantom and Mandrake, they go in there quite quickly, they get rid of it, and then they're headed to an island, a remote island. Mandrake's brother has coordinated all this. They're wanting to get rid of Mandrake, they're wanting to kill him, and the Phantom is just an added bonus, you could say, and that is our reason why we have that story. And then they foil that plot. Both of those people go to jail and all is well again. So we have a new story. We have the Missing Avatrix. It's where the Mandrake gets these visions of this lady, and they find out that there's an anniversary to this woman that went missing around this island. So Mandrake the Magician go to the island, and the Phantom goes and helps. The Mandrake and the Magician end up running into a heap of pirates. They not only find the lady, but it's actually the lady's daughter, and the woman who disappeared, actually, she passed away, which is a bit sad, but they found the daughter, and there's quite a large sum of money on this lady because she's been missing for over 20 odd years. The pirates want something of it, and then Mandrake the Magician starts putting all these hypnotic targets on them. He puts one of the pirates starts going aboard, and that all gets shut down, and all is well again. And the lady, the daughter, is now with her family, which is a good way to end that story, but it's also quite a little bit of a sour note of it all, but it is a good ending to the story since we did find someone, and not both of them obviously have perished, which is not a good thing. We've now got Lights, Camera, Danger. It's a story about Mandrake the Magician. There is a director, he's wanting to make a movie out of Mandrake the Magician, and actually he's not actually wanting to do that. The movie gets started. The movie is obviously not about Mandrake the Magician, it's actually about Lothar, and they're wanting to... The director has basically created this plan. There's no movie actually going to be made of Lothar. Lothar keeps getting into these situations where there's potentially an accident happening, but it's not that at all. People are this director and his old mate are wanting basically Lothar to be killed. And Lothar has none of that. They go to the 12 Nations to see if there's a cameraman there, and there's no extra footage there. So that gets torn down and they are all going to jail because there's no movie. There's a plot to kill Lothar, and then they have an all-out little jungle fight, and Lothar eventually wins. And then we have another story called Trouble in the 12 Nations. We have Lothar's cousin actually is running for president of the 12 Nations, and there is a plot, multiple plots to get assassination attempts for the incoming president. So those assassination attempts happen. They're having trouble trying to track down an old enemy, and they don't know where he is. This is the guy that we're talking about here. And then we have multiple assassinations. There's a car bombing, and eventually we still don't know where he is, but multiple people have gone to jail. The greatest part of this story is that the president does get in, and then wait for this. Beautiful day, Miss Smith, and how's Mr. Smith? Don't even mention that lout. He lives in that gloomy man cave of his. Ha ha! Tell him I said hi. We're somewhere in the Floridan USA. Old Tarncoal in his lair. I have had it with you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Persona non grata, we have to live in hiding because of you. Oh, crazy woman, get away from me. I am sick of your face glued to the TV, to the computer. Enough. No more obsessing over Lothar and Mona. I'm cancelling the cable. It's rotted your brain. Ow! I better hear you working on your chores out there, Smith. New adventure. But yeah, I like how, yeah, we see a lot of like keyboard warriors, and they basically they're in the same little dungeon, and they're in their little computer room. They go, I'm gonna put out so many frets. And then we have got Shadows on the Devil Road. So this one's about how the Mandrake the Magician has a visit from this old man. He writes down on he writes in the ground and he says Ben D. And this old man then obviously passes away. Mandrake the Magician gets in the help of the Phantom and Lopa. They go on to Devil Road. They wonder why they can't find. And because of all this, that old man that obviously ended up passing away was trying to find this treasure that had been stolen. And no one knows where it is. And then he finally found out where it is, to try and prove his innocence, because everyone thought that, oh, he's the person that stole it. And it has clouded his reputation for all his life. And he's tried to clear his name and all that kind of stuff. His daughter is also trying to find it. He wants to make sure that his father's name is cleared. There are multiple people. There are a prince over in the high mountains, and there are another gang, and they're wanting it as well. Those two obviously team up. They're wanting to kill the Phantom, Lothar, and Mandrake the Magician, and eventually they find where the treasure is hidden, and the treasure is actually hidden at the bend. So the thing that he writes down in the ground isn't actually Ben D, it's actually the bend, because the treasure is actually inside the bend. We've got a quicksand. So inside the quicksand, that's where the treasure is. And they all find it out, and the Phantom then donates all that money, I think, to a hospital. And then we've got Still Lovely, Still Deadly. It was publication dates it was started in 2006. It ended on the 7th of the 10th, 2006. And one other thing I'd like to actually speak about is Ivan Peterson's coloring. It's really, really cool. And I can't believe how some of the different colors he uses. But another thing that I have noticed is that with this book, And we won't get into this story just yet. But with this book and some of the annuals that have been coming out through, I think since probably, I guess for the last 5 or 6 years, we see a common thing that happens with annuals. As you get towards the middle part of the book, it gets harder and harder to try and read the pages. And this is quite here, right now. This is a clear example. Like if you're reading this comic book, you're reading it, you get to like halfway through here and there's text on this side of the page, it becomes quite hard to read. Like the text on this side is quite hard to read. I had trouble trying to read what some of the words closer to the binding actually said. And we've been seeing that a lot through when the annuals get published, and especially with some of the big special books that we've seen through the last couple of years. We've seen that a fair bit. Now, I don't know if there's like an issue where you can try and fix. I know it's a fixed binding. That's what obviously makes the book. And I know once the book is binded, you can't really change it because it's already made. And the pages again put together and those binding machines, yeah, they can be quite dangerous at times. I know when I did some work at like a news agency, they would have these kind of machines where you would be able to put the plastic on something, one of the magazines, and then there was this other thing where they would get like a book like this, they would tear the front cover off, and then they would say, oh, we've got 3 or 4 of those covers of those books. We're going to send those back and obviously get our money back because they haven't sold those. And then they would get those, they would put those into a container. Sometimes they would put it into a container. Sometimes they'd take it to this machine if they had a lot of them. And this machine, which actually strapped them all together, and that machine was, yeah, if you weren't up to it and you didn't know what you were doing, yeah, it was quite dangerous. But anyways, back to the story. This story is about this guy. He's trying to make people scared. He wants this secret lotus. There's this particular flower. And it's causing people to go and kill someone. Automatically wants to go and kill someone. So then Mandrake tells of this story where there was this daughter and she was hanging out with this really, really strange uncle. This strange uncle had exotic world of plants and flowers, and the plants are really, really good. They're a great hobby, but he was using them for dangerous purposes. He wanted to make sure that the daughter never left and was still in his custody, you could say. And he didn't like that. He wanted to make sure that people were obviously going to die. That daughter obviously had a fiance, and eventually, and of course, that guy who ended up obviously going to jail and spending the rest of his life in jail had a son. Well, that son is now back at that same house. There's a new family there. He's causing the same grievances as his father or his uncle. And Mandrake the magician has been led into a trap. He's gone into a collapsing door. And this part where there was a shed, there was all these different poisonous vines and they were all there. They got burnt. The next thing that was also there as another employee, someone went in there and obviously tripped and fell. And obviously there was a collapsing door and all these would slowly collapse. It was one of those kind of mechanisms. The police get called, the son gets taken away, and eventually they want to try and find out what happens to Mandrake because they think he's dead. And Mandrake was able to become invisible and he gets out of there. He goes to hospital and becomes into a coma. He feels ill because he's got touched one of the poisonous, dangerous vines that was still there. And so Lothar goes to Bengala. He gets 3 flowers. They go back with the flowers. The doctors are quite hesitant to try and even use these. And they end up using it, and Mandrake the Magician makes a full recovery. And so we now have the last 3 stories. The Magician's Curse, Part 1. Diana is actually talking to a person, a magician of some sort. And Diana is going to kill the Phantom. Phantom evades that attack, and then Diana still wants to kill it. And then the Phantom is able to calm her down and smashes the mirror. To be continued. Then we've got part 2, where we meet Mandrake is pulling out one of those beetroot things. It kind of looks like one of those little creatures from Harry Potter. Like when there's that scene where they're pulling all of those little, you might actually tell us, like they're pulling all those little vegetables out of those pots, and those vegetables are going like, don't grab me out. I need to go back into the pot. Like that kind of stuff. That was a cool, really, really weird voice. But then he's pulling out hats, he's pulling out rabbits, he's pulling out doves, as a magician does. He's clapping, he's getting a standing ovation. He goes back and receives this odd feeling that there's people starting to rally, and they're starting to come and kill the Mandrake the Magician. And then he finds out that there's this other magician, and he is wanting Mandrake basically to be dead. Now, the magician part of it, why this evil magician, Mandrake the Magician, even exists, why he exists because every time Mandrake the Magician puts out a hypnotic spell or something like that, uses his magician powers, every time those powers resolve, some of that power goes to another thing. And over time, that has been used, eventually creating what we see here. So basically, Mandrake Magician's powers have created another entirely evil being, and is wanting basically to kill Mandrake the Magician, and is basically wanting to make sure that, he doesn't end up coming back and doesn't end up doing any more good. So we got part 3. This story was written by Andrew Conson. The art was done by Kay. And I think it was also wrote by Jeff Dwyer. So part 1 was done by Andrew Constant. Part 2 was done by Jeff Dwyer. Come down to our final battle. The evil magician is wanting to kill the Mandrake the Magician, but one thing he hasn't thought about, it is the Phantom. And we're about to get to the part where we see the most awesome tag team in the world. It is none other than, I was reading this and I looked at the page and I thought, yes, this is a Phantom multiverse. We have hit the peak of stories. This is the best story I have ever read this year. Now that is a big play. That is a big pick. But I love that page just there. It's just saying, hey, I've got a heap of other people here that need to have some action, and some of those actions are gonna be deadly. We're going to the Phantom Multiverse. It is Phantom Multiverse time. The only reason why I thought that this was like a Phantom Multiverse was because in Avengers Endgame, we have all these characters spilling out into the world, and that's what this reminded me of. It is like a Phantom Multiverse. There's a heap of worlds, there's a heap of centuries involved with you, and these 3 stories, this 3-part series was awesome. The art is awesome, the story is a little bit strange, but it is pretty good, and I really, really enjoyed this 3-part series. It was really, really cool. It was a nice interpretation of it, like a different perspective, that every time Mandrake the Magician puts out powers and does his hypnotic gestures and stuff, there's got to be some kind of consequence to doing that. And the consequence to doing that is creating an evil being that wants your deathly devours. And we've also got the new Legacy series. Obviously, you also says goodbye to the Phantom. We've got the Super Yank comics. If you want those, you can go to Few Publications website at phantomcomic.com.au. We'll have a comic book review coming of both books really soon. If you want to subscribe and be like the Colonel, subscribe to the Phantom for $227 per year. I was about to say $27. That would be cheap. I would definitely subscribe to it. I've subscribed to it in the past, and it's really good. You get your Phantom comics in a little cardboard envelope, and you can get that at the same website, phantomcomic.com.au. We've got the Phantom Publishing Chronicle, we've got the back cover, front cover, Jason Paulos, and now we've actually also got the replica book to have a look at as well. The King of Base. We're going to have a brief look at this, and then we're going to wrap this comic book review up. I still think it's quite a good thing that they are still making these as well. I know they've been going on for a long period of time, but it's also just nice to have a look at the art that was used in the book of old. The ad is no longer available. Anyways, thank you for watching this comic book review of the 2026 annual, and I will see you next time on the Phantom Cave Reviews YouTube channel. Keep Phantom Caving,